Here's that familiar diagram again, the cycle of fifths. Now I've mentioned before that the chord of C is very closely related to the chord of G and the chord of F. Because they're nearby on this diagram, they're closely related keys. If you sit at the piano and play those chords repeatedly, maybe C, then G, back to C, back to G, pop to F, then to C, you'll find that you're improvising in the key of C. It's important to realise that you're changing chord, but you're not changing key. If you play on white notes only, then you're staying in the key of C. Improvising needn't be hard, it needn't be scary. It's just playing around with these chords and listening to the sound they make. Now another closely related chord is A minor. Take a look at those four chords. Countless songs have been written with just those four chords, whether it's pop or classical. Those four chords work really well together. Now other closely related chords are D minor and E minor. These 6 chords have something in common. They all use just white notes. So if you play around with these 6 chords, you are firmly in the key of C. However, it's common practice to tweak the E minor chord into an E major chord. E major chord is E, G sharp and B. If you use that E major chord, it leads really nicely to the A minor chord. E to A minor sounds really good and actually affects a change of key. So if you play with the C, F and G at the top, you'll be playing in C major, and if you play around with the lower chords, the D minor, A minor and E, you'll be briefly visiting the key of A minor, and you can pop back to C. So I'd really recommend you just play around with those 6 chords using the E major and those other chords at the top of the diagram. As I said, you can move from C to F to G really quite freely. You can move from A minor, D minor and E quite freely. You can also move from a relative major to a relative minor. You can even move diagonally across these chords. But there are 2 chord progressions that are really good and really strong, which is G to C, that's always going to sound good, and E to A minor, that's always going to sound good. We call them perfect cadences, and I'll tell you about them in another video. So play around with those 6 chords. Sit at the piano, find some tunes, find some chords, find some moves, some chord progressions that you like the sound of. Now, of course, we're in the key of C here because C is at the centre of this little loop of notes. You can use any area of the cycle of fifths. If you want to focus on the key of A, by all means do. You'll be using these 6 chords.
At the piano, make up a piece using the 6 chords that are circled. Move quite freely between one chord and another, but use the chord progression G to C and E to A minor most often.
I hope you've got a copy of this book. There's More to Playing the Piano by David Hall. Now in chapter 11, I asked you to try to improvise a piece on the piano just using one chord. In chapter 13, I suggested you use 2 chords, the major and the relative minor. But now we're racing on to chapter 14, where I've suggested you use 6 chords for your improvisation. Try and come up with something using 6 chords. I'm going to demonstrate something really simple that you might do. So I'm just going to play the bass note in my left hand and the 3-note chord in my right hand. And I'm going to use these 6 chords, F, C, G, D, A and E, quite freely. Now, of course, I wouldn't normally be particularly happy with what I just did then, but it's a starting point. As you get more familiar with these chords, you can play them in different positions. You can make it less jumpy, so that, for example, C major could be here, and G major, without moving your hand too much, could be in this position, B, D, G, rather than jumping up to the triad. So, using different hand positions, still only using the roots in my left hand though, so my left hand's still jumping. I might come up with something like this. So the more you do it, the more you can get used to these different chords, and the more you can start incorporating other styles. I could just stick to these chords and do something in the style of Mozart. I could use these 6 chords and play some jazz. You could use these for some more poppy kind of things. Whatever style of music, these 6 chords will serve you well. But of course, do feel free to try a different set of 6. Not every piece is in C major. It's a good starting place, but you want to become fluent in every key, ideally. So use this idea of related chords to have some fun on the piano.